Did you know that nearly 53% of car repairs could be avoided with just a few simple habits? And here's the shocking part. How you start your car is one of the biggest culprits. If you're tired of wasting money on repairs, stop making these common mistakes. This video breaks it down in 3 key sections: the mistakes you're probably making, tips to keep your old car running smoothly, and the "what was I thinking" moments that can save you big in the long run. Mistake number 1, ignoring dashboard warnings and engine noises. I get it, the check engine light is not a big deal 99% of the time, but that 1% could cost you plenty. The moment you see warning lights or hear strange sounds, grab your OBD2 scanner. Different sounds have different associated problems. Knocking and grinding generally mean an engine problem. A squealing sound could mean a loose belt, while bad transmissions make noise as you shift gears. If you hear a humming noise, it could mean the transmission is failing. However, it could also mean your car needs lubrication. Whatever you hear, don't ignore it. Even if the scanner doesn't show anything, what might seem like a small problem could be a disaster waiting to happen. Even if it's a new car, many new car owners have experienced their cars shutting off while driving. These include the 2016 to 2020 Nissan Rogue, 2021 to 2023 Ford Bronco Sport, 2014 GMC Sierra, and 10 different 2021 to 2023 Mercedes-Benz models. These are the recent cars with recalls that we know of, so when you hear strange sounds, don't risk it. Turn the car off and consult the owner's manual. Find out how severe the problem is before restarting. If in doubt, call a professional. But if you're lucky, all you need is what we will discuss next. Mistake number 2, not checking fluid levels. There was a time when all drivers checked their fluids before starting the car. Now, electronic systems have spoiled us. However, the dashboard lights often reveal a problem when it is already too late. There are 6 main fluids in a car: engine oil, coolant, power steering, brake, transmission, and windshield washer fluid. Typically, you don't need to check these more than once a month. However, you need to do this regularly. If your car burns oil, while new cars will warn you as the oil level is being depleted, older cars are not as clever. Audi and performance BMWs are notorious oil burners. However, even more durable brands make mistakes. These include the 2007 Camry, 2010 to 2013 Acura RDX, and several Subarus including the Impreza and Forester. If the oil level is too low, the engine won't have enough lubrication. This will cause extreme heat, and you might also hear knocking or pinging sounds. If you ignore the oil pressure light, you could end up losing your engine. In this case, all it takes to avoid costly engine repairs is to visually inspect the fluids. Checking your fluid levels is especially critical in extreme situations. Mistake number 3, starting in extreme weather without proper preparation. Extreme weather is a nightmare for cars. Extreme cold can affect the battery, oil, fuel systems, and alternators. Extreme heat is even worse because everything becomes a target. No matter how freezing it is, you must resist a cold start. Cold weather causes oil to move slowly. If you rev your engine when the oil hasn't properly circulated, it could overheat, especially with a turbocharged engine. The #1 cause of turbocharger failure is oil starvation. At idle, a turbocharger spins at 20,000 RPM. However, when you rev the engine, this goes as high as 300,000 RPM. If the turbocharger doesn't get oil for even a fraction of a second, it could cause long-term damage. Watch our video on 7 common turbo-killing mistakes and how to prevent them to learn more. Fixing a bad turbo engine will cost between $1,500 to $55,000. All you have to do to prevent this expensive mistake is to let the car idle. It only takes 30 seconds to a minute for the oil to lubricate properly, even in winter. However, if the temperature is below -15 degrees Celsius, you need a block heater. Plug it in for at least 4 hours or through the night before you start the engine. Always check the coolant level before starting when the weather is too hot. If you drive with an overheated engine, it could blow the gasket head. This will cost roughly $1,400 to repair. Mistake number 4, cranking the starter too long. As cars age, they often require more effort to get started. The same is also true during winter. But whatever you do, do not crank the starter for too long. Ideally, you should crank the starter for no longer than 15 seconds. In rare instances, depending on the make and model, you can go as high as 30 seconds. When you crank the car too much, it can cause several issues. For starters, it will drain your battery. It can also overheat the starter and lead to permanent damage. This will only cost a couple hundred to replace, but it's still money. Extended cranking can also flood the engine with fuel or worsen whatever is causing the problem. If your car doesn't start after cranking for 10 seconds, stop. Let the starter cool for 30 seconds and try again. If after the third try it still doesn't start, then it's time to troubleshoot. Several things could be the problem, like a weak battery or bad spark plugs. It could also be clogged fuel injectors, a bad fuel pump, or a bad crankshaft position sensor. You can try one more thing. If you drive an old car with a carburetor, step on the gas while you crank the starter to see if that works. If it doesn't, we have more tips in the next section. Mistake number 5, not switching off accessories before starting. One of the most common myths today is that you need to switch off accessories before starting the car. The belief is that the power surge at startup will destroy the AC, radio, and whatever else is on. The other belief is that it will pull too much power from the battery and the car won't start. While it is partly true, it does not apply to modern cars. Cars made in the last 3 decades have relays to prevent surges. Plus, new cars automatically direct power from the battery to the starter motor, so no power will go to the accessories when you crank your car. You should only follow this advice for new cars with electrical gremlins or poor designs like Fiat, MG, and Chrysler. However, the rules are different for older cars, but even then, it isn't usually an issue unless the battery is weak. Mistake number 6, driving without warming up. When you're in a hurry, you want to get in the car and drive off immediately. While this is fine for modern cars, this is very bad for cars with carburetors. The carburetor needs a few seconds to mix fuel and air. Rushing this process can cause engine wear, especially in cold conditions. But in the short run, this process is even more dangerous. Revving the engine will cause too much fuel to be injected, and the car will sputter or stall. You don't want to be on a busy road when this happens. What you should do instead is to allow the car to warm up for a minute before you drive. As with modern cars, this will also give the oil enough time to circulate. If the weather is really cold, carburetor engines might need up to 10 minutes. Don't rev it hard when you start driving until the car has warmed up. The following scenario is the only time you need to warm up a new car for longer. Mistake number 7, not inspecting a car that has been idle for months before starting. If you haven't driven a car in months, the worst thing you can do is start it immediately. For starters, the vehicle probably won't start. Unlike what we see in post-apocalyptic movies, car batteries die when they're not in use. If it does start, it could lead to serious damage. That's because fluids degrade over time. Pumping contaminated engine oil, coolant, or brake fluid will damage major components of the engine. The engine won't be properly lubricated, so it will overheat and could lead to engine failure. Fuel also disintegrates over time. Starting the car will leave gum-like deposits all over the engine. This can be catastrophic for the fuel injectors and pump and lead to engine failure. Unless you have $4,000 to $10,000 to spare, here's what you should do instead. First, begin by inspecting the battery with a multimeter. If the voltage is low, charge it or replace it. Next, inspect the fluids to ensure no obvious contaminants or gels. If the engine oil is black, it needs to be swapped out. Third, inspect the tires to ensure they are at the right PSI. If there are any flat spots or cracks, replace them. Next, inspect or drain out the fuel. If you can't drain it, use a fuel stabilizer to break up any gunk. The last thing to do is to carry out a physical inspection of the car. Check for rust, frayed wires, or signs of rodent infestation. If the car is in proper order, start it and let it idle for a few minutes. The oil will take longer than normal to flow freely. And like we said in the beginning, pay attention to odd sounds or dashboard warning lights. Mistake number 8, ignoring corroded battery terminals. One of the signs that your car battery is getting old is corrosion. As it approaches expiration, you will begin to notice white, green, or bluish powder on the terminals. While this isn't an immediate problem, it will be if you ignore it. Unless you do something about it, corrosion will keep increasing. Corrosion blocks the flow of electrical currents, weakening the battery and damaging electrical systems. Fortunately, it is an easy problem to deal with. Disconnect the battery and use a wire brush to remove the visible powders from the terminal. Next, use battery terminal cleaner to neutralize the corrosion. Repeat this for any cables connected to the battery showing signs of corrosion. Mistakes like ignoring corrosion are bad, but not as bad as the ones we'll reveal in the next section. Mistake number 9, ignoring scheduled maintenance. I get it, owning a car adds up. The average cost to own and operate a new car is roughly $12,100 annually. Maintenance and tire replacements alone gulp roughly $1,500. That is why drivers need to save money wherever they can. However, ignoring routine maintenance is not the way to do it. Instead, you are risking damage to critical components that will cost you much more than you save. For example, driving with old oil can lead to a blown gasket. When you begin to see white smoke from the exhaust, you can kiss $1,500 goodbye, all because you wanted to save $125. Not swapping fuel filters can also let fuel gunk into the engine. If the engine gets damaged and needs to be replaced, that's at least $5,000 because you wanted to save $150. If you have ignored routine maintenance, you must thoroughly inspect your car before every drive. Ensure the fluid levels are topped up and the fluids are clear. Listen for strange sounds and scan the car, even without warning lights. Regular maintenance is not a scam. It actually helps your engine and your pocket, unlike the next mistake. Mistake number 10, relying on start and stop systems. Nearly every new car has a start-stop system. They are meant to help you save between 3 to 10% of fuel. In some instances, it can go as high as 26%. While this sounds great in theory, it is a mess in reality. That's because these systems burn out starter motors and batteries quicker. Even though the AGM battery and starter are more durable than regular ones, they still degrade quicker. They are also twice as expensive, so whatever you save on fuel, you'll spend on battery replacement. Another thing to be wary of is the risk of accidents. That delay in the car coming back on has led to many accidents already. So, if you have a start-stop system, you might want to switch it off before you start driving. Some cars allow you to permanently disable them or provide a temporary off button. If your car has no off switch, you can code it or buy a bypass. Don't worry, this won't void your warranty. It will only be a problem if the bypass causes an accident or a part of your vehicle to malfunction. One could argue that the start and stop system is a danger if you keep forgetting to switch it off. Brace yourself for long-term costs. That is also what will happen if you make the next mistake. Mistake number 11, turning the key after the car has started. Everybody makes this mistake at least once. You forgot the car was already on, so you twisted the ignition key again, or you turned the key to put the car on but failed to release it immediately after. When this happens, you will hear a grinding noise from the starter motor. This is just a warning sound and nothing to be concerned about. However, if you keep making this mistake, it will damage your car. That's because when you crank the engine, the starter motor grinds against the engine flywheel. This process will cause the teeth on both parts to wear out, leading to costly repairs. If the flywheel is damaged, the repair could cost over $1,200. If you're unsure if the car is on, switching it off and then on again is better. Thankfully, this mistake cannot ruin your engine, unlike the final one on our list. Mistake number 12, starting your car with the wrong fuel or oil. Nearly 20% of drivers have made a misfueling error. You forgot that you were in the diesel car or vice versa and put the wrong fuel in. When this happens, the worst thing you can do is start your car. Don't even do it to move away from the pump. Instead, put the car in neutral, push it to the side, and call for a tow. That's because gasoline in a diesel engine will damage the fuel pump and the injectors. That repair will cost you between $500 and $1,500. However, the damage won't be as immediate if you drive a gasoline car. In either case, you need to drain the fuel tank immediately. While towing the car will cost you a few hundred, it is cheaper. The same applies if you put the wrong engine oil in your car. Typically, the wrong oil will cause leaks and odd noises. It will also lower your fuel economy. However, in rare instances, it could burn your engine. That's why you must drain the oil immediately or risk up to $10,000 for repair. Whether it's a boneheaded mistake or a myth you've long held onto, these tips will help you treat your car the way it deserves. But if your car has been breaking down too often and you're ready for an upgrade, watch our video on 17 cars that simply never break down.